Trump recently spoke at the UN and a lot of crazy stuff went down. First, we have "This is insane." As Trump arrived to the UN, the escalator stopped working the moment he stepped on it. Then the teleprompter stopped working the moment he got up to the podium to speak. So as you can see, we've got Trump with the First Lady here, and the escalator is working as they board, but within like a second, as soon as they step on, boom, escalator just gets shut off. Now keep in mind that Trump is 79 years old, and him and the First Lady just walk right up anyways, so you could say that this kind of just backfired on whoever turned the escalator off. Just made Trump look athletic for his age, unless this wasn't intentional and the UN really is just that janky. And maybe they are, but it seems a bit too coincidental, especially considering that next they shut off Trump's teleprompter. Now, Trump aside though, it's hilarious how whiny the UN constantly comes off. For example, we previously discussed how the UN accused Japan of being an offensive patriarchal culture because they would never allow a woman to take the imperial throne. And Japan responded by saying that the position of the imperial throne is not a basic human right. They even told a UN feminist group that they couldn't come to the country anymore after they were already scheduled to visit, rescinding the invitation after the aforementioned accusations. But Japan wasn't done there either, as they also demanded that their contributions in funding the UN must not be used on any women's rights panels of the UN. In a separate issue, the UN also told Japan that they need to adopt more DEI policies, which was equally as hilarious. Returning to Trump, he had some more things to say addressing the UN directly.
And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
And from that point on, Trump pretty much just went off on the UN.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the #1 political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much.
At some point during the speech, Trump then went on to address London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who, if you're familiar with, recently got called out by Trump during his visit to the UK, in which Trump expressly said that he doesn't want Sadiq Khan invited to one of the dinners that was being held there during his visit. If you're not familiar with all that stuff, consider watching my video covering Trump's visit to the UK. I'll link that in the description for you. But let's see what he has to say here now, too.
And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should, in many cases, be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will be given. We have to solve the problem, and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25,000, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. But not anymore. According to the Council of Europe in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now.
You know, it's really crazy how saying that you don't want completely unrestricted mass illegal migration will get you labeled a fascist by certain Redditor types. There's nothing wrong with having a system to handle these things, and an approach where countries improve each other instead of offloading their problems on others is a very reasonable thing, despite what some extremists may say. Lastly, for the record, the reason these extremists try to virtue signal over this issue so much is because they actually want to see the collapse of countries like the US, the UK, and Japan, and they use their fake outrage to try and mask their true intentions. But let me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments, and as always, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed my coverage, please also consider liking and or subscribing to the channel. It helps out greatly. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.